Hi, welcome to Financial Education for the Nation. My name's Warren Shute, and today we're going to cover wills and trusts. So we're going to cover some bullet points which include how to set up a will, who's involved with a will, what are the different parties, how to set up a trust, how to set it up correctly, who's involved with the trust, why do you want a trust in your will, why would it be important? It's a big topic. We're going to keep it headline rate. It's going to be very succinct, maximum 10 minutes. And I've got Paul on the line with me as well to ask some questions so it comes across nice and clearly. So, hello, Paul. Over to you.
Hi, Warren. Good morning. Right, really important subject. I know that you talk a lot about it, how important it is. Can you just emphasize that? Because I think for a lot of people, it's something we don't think about until we're getting old.
It's so important. In my new book, The Money Plan, I dedicate, I think, 2 chapters to trusts, wills, setting things up correctly. You work your whole life to earn this money. Let's make sure it passes to the right people in the most tax efficient way, using the laws of the land within reasonable boundaries that it works for you. So we're not doing anything esoteric, anything off-piste. It's just doing nice vanilla estate planning for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Joe Public.
Okay, and it's so important because what happens if we die without a will? What's the situation?
Okay. So it depends on your situation, okay? So if you don't have any children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren or anything else, it's just you're a married couple, it goes to each other. If you're a single guy and you're a single lady, you've got no will, it goes to the Crown. Okay, so you've got to be careful where the money wants to go. If you are married and you have children or grandchildren, the spouse just inherits the first £250,000. They get all your personal assets and things like that, all your personal possessions, your house content and things. But the first £250,000, the other £250,000 is split between your children or grandchildren and your partner and yourself who's passed away. So let's have a little scenario of it. You've got a house, the mortgage is paid off, you've got some asset savings, maybe a buy-to-let, and you die without a will. It's all very well your wife getting your personal assets and the first £250,000, but they may then own the house with your children or grandchildren. Now that's okay because they're your children. What happens if you're not so keen on your daughter-in-law or your son-in-law? Actually, if they have a matrimonial breakdown, who do you now own the house with? What does the court, the divorce settlement sort of agree to? So it's so important for everyone, 18 or older, sort your will out. Get a will. And today we're going to cover the main points of that and show you how to do it.
Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead with that then. So where do we start? What's the process?
Okay, so first thing I think to look at is who's involved with a will. So you've got the testator, the person who sets up the will. Okay, they're the person who writes the will. So that's you or me. You've got executors. Now, executors are people you trust to administer your will. They read the will. They'll close any sort of utility bills down. They'll transfer any savings you've got. They'll claim on any life assurance. They're the executors. They're the administrators. Okay, so someone who would be a good executor is someone who's very well organized, someone you can trust to get the job done. Okay, typically we'll put down our partner, husband, wife. Okay, but it doesn't have to be. And you can also put another person down as well, because heaven forbid if you were together when you died, it was an accident when you were together, you obviously need somebody around to do it after. Okay, so husband and wife, couple, put the other one down, then maybe some other people, 18 years or older. Okay, now they don't need to be legally qualified because they can go and speak to someone like myself or a solicitor and get legal advice. They can just pay for that. So unless your estate's particularly complicated, nice and simple, husband, wife, maybe children, maybe someone who's particularly good with admin. Got minor children. Now, minor children legally is defined as 18, but let's run a scenario where your 19-year-old lost their mum and dad. They might need someone to look after them, to be a guardian for them. But particularly 18 years or younger, you need to appoint a guardian for your children. Now, learn from my own personal experience, don't appoint a couple, appoint an individual, because couples sometimes break up. So let's appoint an individual, yeah, and maybe a reserve. So one individual and a reserve, just in case something happens. And think of logistics when you do this. So think of your geography. So families these days live far apart from one another. Yes, you love your sibling the most, probably. However, isn't it more important that your children remain in the same school, have the same network of friends during a time of crisis like this? So maybe consider someone who lives more locally, or speak to your guardians and say, well, look, if we did this and we made provision for you, would you relocate here so the children could stay in the same school? So guardians, a very, very important point. What's next on the list? I guess you've really got beneficiaries. Okay, so beneficiaries are the people who are going to benefit from the will. Okay, so who gets the what and when? And there's different types of beneficiaries depending on when they get a specific bequest or gift. So whether you say, I leave my jewelry, my wedding ring, my watch, whatever it might be, to my son, daughter, nephew, niece, I leave £1,000 to my nephew, nieces, that kind of thing. These are typical things that people do. Or whether it's the residue of the estate. So after everything else, all the taxes have been paid, all the gifts have been made, everything's settled out, what's left over, I leave this to the residue, the beneficiaries. And those beneficiaries can either be individuals, or they could be trusts. And they can be a trust when you want to protect the money. So I'll finish off wrapping up the will, who's involved with the will, and then we'll talk about trust a little bit more. We'll understand that a little bit. So they're the main people or parties involved with a will. The other thing you put in a will typically is your funeral request, whether it's a burial or a cremation.
Okay.
And with my clients, I go one step forward, further than that, and I also try and ask them to then write out their funeral wishes on how they would like it performed.
Okay.
And let me explain the reason for doing that. It's not to be morbid in any way. What it's doing is it's taking a burden, a liability off your loved ones and taking responsibility of it yourself during a time when you're in a good state of mind. So they've lost someone they love. They're in a place of upset and concern, and now they've got to plan a funeral. It's the last thing you want on their list. Plan it, get it sorted, do it yourself, and you know how it's going to run.
Okay.
Burial cremation. Cremation's a great one because what you can do with the ashes. So I've had all great sorts of things, from spreading the ashes in certain sort of places of significant interest to one guy wants to put them in a rocket, send them up in a rocket, a little firework rocket up into the sky, get them blown up. And you can also have them made into a stone now. So you can make them into like stones, so you can keep them with you. All right?
Okay.
So that's the will. That's the main terms there, what you asked.
Okay, so just before trust then, what's the first step in getting this sorted out? So I understand who's involved now. What do I do to get a will, to write a will?
Right, so the easiest thing for you to do is go to warrenshute.com, register, go to the download section, and on the download section, you've got key questions about your will. There's another document called Key Questions About Your LPA, which you can cover another time. Key questions about your will. Just answer those questions on there in order. Take a bit of time, make sure you're happy with it. And you can take that document to any solicitor. It's a document that I've created, but any solicitor, and say, I want to create a will, here you go. Or you can scan and email it to us and we can arrange it for you. But this isn't a sales pitch. This is download that document for free, go and take it to your local firm of solicitors, get a quote, make sure you're happy with it, and then get them to implement it. Or send it to us and we're happy to do it for you.
Okay, great.
Nice.
All right, so if wills is one scenario, trust, which you've mentioned. Now, I think to most people, they probably don't know much about trusts. We only really hear about them in a negative context for big companies and rich people who are trying to avoid tax. Is that what they're for?
No, a trust is some of the oldest legal legislation, okay? And one of the things I'd say to you is it allows you to control the flow of your money. That's all it does. But the best way to think of a trust and think what is a trust, the way I try and explain it to my clients is it's like a company. It's its own entity. It's a thing, okay? And you have trustees who look after it, okay? So you need 2 trustees at least, preferably more than 2. You have these trustees that look after it, and they look after the money on behalf of the beneficiaries. It's what we call a fiduciary responsibility. It's not their money. They can't really benefit from it, or they could if they're a beneficiary, but they look after it for the beneficiaries. Now, the trustee and the beneficiary could be the same people, but they could be completely different. Okay? And the money in the trust can be anything from cash to an investment to property, or a mixture of all of these. And the money could have come from your estate in your will. So therefore it's called a will trust because it's written within the wording of your will. Your solicitor will do this at the same time. Or it could be set up during your lifetime. Therefore it's called a lifetime trust. And it receives proceeds from maybe your death in service. Just think of that scenario. You might not think you're particularly wealthy, therefore you don't need this trust. But you've got a house, maybe it's worth so much money, you've got some savings, but actually you've got some pensions that might fall into your estate, and you've got some death in service that might fall into your estate. Why not nominate people on your pension so it doesn't, and have the death in service paid into a trust. So you're keeping your estate taxes as low as possible.
Okay.
So that's the real sort of structure of a trust.
Okay, so why, I mean, it sounds like then a trust is more complicated than a straightforward will, as most of us know it. So what are the advantages of each? In what scenario would you use a trust?
Okay. There's two types of will. Okay, so we've gone through who's involved with the will, and there's two types of will. One is a basic, simple will. Basic, simple will simply means I die, I leave my assets to this person or these people. And you could probably include in there some specific gifts. I'll give £500 to each of my nephews, for example, and the rest of it to my wife. And in the event of her passing away before me, I leave it to my children equally. Okay? If they die before me, it goes to their children. It's very simple. The second choice is, well, actually, do you know what? I love my partner to bits. However, what happens if I leave my house to her and she were to remarry before she dies? And that marriage doesn't work out and she gets a divorce. Actually, my share of the house is part of the matrimonial assets for her. And, well, actually, it could be part of the divorce. She might lose some of it. Or worse still, he doesn't make a will and dies, and it all goes to the new partner. Now, my children don't get anything. So we're not avoiding taxes here. We're not doing anything wrong. We're just saying, well, actually, I own half this house, and as much as I want my wife to live in it in the event of me passing away, when she ultimately dies, I want my share to ensure it goes to my children. And that's all a property trust would do within a will. It would protect your share to ensure it passes down to your children. It has some other benefits to it about bankruptcy and things like that and being sued. Because she doesn't own it, it can't ever be included within her estate for assessment. It's always she's using it, has an entitlement during her lifetime, but actually ultimately it's going to go down to my children or whoever I put on the trust. It can be anyone. Okay? That's the first type of trust in a will, and we call that a property trust. Second type of trust is, well, okay, you might like that. That might be good, or it might not be good for whatever reason. You might not want to do that one. But another scenario would be, well, actually, you've got all this money and you've got a child and it's fairly young. Maybe they're 18 even. Okay, so they're an adult. But actually, if they were to inherit a lot of money, it might ruin them, might spoil them. They might not then have a desire to go and work, go and do some more studying and get on with their life. They get money too soon. Or actually, you might love your son and daughter to bits. But you may not love your future daughter-in-law or son-in-law just as much as your son or daughter does, okay? You may not think that their intentions are how they should be, or actually not behaving in a manner you think is commensurate to a long relationship. So one thing you can do is you can leave money into what we call a discretionary trust. You can leave some or all of your estate into this discretionary trust on your death. And the discretionary trust is looked after by the trustees, remember, and your child can be a trustee. You can't, you won't be around, obviously. So you can leave the children as a trustee, and they look after the money for the benefit of the beneficiaries, which will include your children and future grandchildren. Okay, and then you leave them a letter of wishes. And the letter of wishes says, well, look, this is my intention, whatever it might be. Now, my intention would be to help them with education, make sure they've got enough money to go through schooling, university, that sort of thing. Maybe help them with a sensible business venture. You don't want to go and do anything silly, but maybe they want to set some kind of business up you really support. Maybe support their first home, their property purchase. And that's what this trust can be for. But because no one individual is entitled to it, you have a discretionary range of beneficiaries, children, grandchildren. It can protect the money for future generations. So you're almost setting up your own legacy. And these trusts aren't expensive. Don't be wrong, a will trust, so putting a trust inside a will is more expensive and more complex than a straightforward basic will. But it's not out of the scope for the everyday man and woman in the street. It's sort of thing that they want to consider. If they own their own home, particularly, they have a chunk of money that they want to ensure they protect. This is what you can do.
Okay, so just to emphasize then, whether I've got a simple estate or a complex estate, this should be pretty high up on my priorities list, sorting this out.
I think the first thing you should do is go to the site, warrenshute.com, register, download the form, okay? go through the form and start filling it in so you know who. And one of the questions on there is, in the event of you dying, would you like all your property, your house, to go to your partner? Or would you like it to go to your children? Where would you like to? So it talks about these trusts in there. And it's really a discussion or a mind-provoking document. You then go and sit with a professional and get some advice and get this up. Don't do it on your own, okay? You can do it on your own. You can go and buy them from a supermarket or from a retailer or online and stuff. But my advice is go and get some advice from someone, or make sure the person who's doing it is a professional, and you know where you stand.
Okay.
Hopefully that's been good. Nice and succinct today. Not as long as previous ones. Hope you've enjoyed it. Any other questions? Are you good?
No, I think that's a great overview. Thanks.
Okay. Like I said, my book's out soon. I cover this in my book, about 2 chapters. Go online to warrenshute.com and register, and make sure you communicate in feedback. This session here was as a result of some communication feedback from some listeners. So I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.